Hey everybody, welcome back to Titan Gaming. And today we're going to kind of just talk about gaming as an industry as a whole today, and a lot of the news that has come out recently and kind of what we're talking about and seeing in 2026 for gaming. And obviously gaming in 2026 is not just evolving, but I would say it's actually undergoing a structural shift across the development from monetization to player expectations, as well as industry feedback into these games as well. We're going to be covering some different titles involving this, such as Helldivers 2, Ark Survival Ascended, Halo, World of Warcraft, and some hardware trends and AAA industry directions as well. So let's go ahead and just kind of dive right into some of the industry standard games currently, and one of the biggest ones, and I'd say I shouldn't say biggest. It's not the most concurrent players right now, but I will say it's definitely shifted the industry as a whole. Helldivers 2 and the new standard for live service that provides. It's maintained a very strong engagement a couple years even after its launch, with hundreds of thousands of concurrent players at its peak and stable with an active stable base after the peak moments. Currently, whenever there's a new big patch out, you see as many as upward as 320,000 people concurrently playing, and you maintain an average of about 80 to 90,000 even in the dead periods. And at its lowest point, you still have about actively 30,000 people in the middle of the work week even. Recent patches have focused on weapon balancing and stratagem tuning, reflecting a direct developer responsiveness to community feedback. And I think that's one of the best places that Arrowhead has actually done well at, is understanding, hearing community feedback, and moving forward, implementing fixes to what the community is complaining about and talking about. Obviously, they don't just take every single one little complaint seriously, but a lot of outspoken ones that are constantly being seen by many different players for sure. Introducing new enemy types and mission modifiers continue to expand the gameplay variety without bloating the experience as well. The most recent big, I guess you could say, expansion to this was the introduction of the cyborgs in the Cyberstan event. And obviously we just got new enemies for the Illuminate as well, but I think that the Galactic War system as a whole remains a very standout innovation across gaming. It created a shared player-driven campaign that is involved in real time, and everything that we do as a group effort, as a fan base or players as a whole, affects the outcome of what happens in the game. And you do not see barely any games that actually truly take every single thing that the players do and actually have it impact that system and game. Everything you do as a specific individual will impact that system in some way, shape, or form. And the Galactic War is an awesome system that I think has one of the best live service updates and live service continuums across modern gaming as a whole. And developers have obviously signaled ongoing plans to deepen the war with possibly new factions and expanded mechanics rather than just seasonal resets like most normal titles do, such as Call of Duty or Battlefield. They just have seasonal updates with some new weapons and a couple new maps. Now, this introduces new enemies, this does still introduce new weapons on us, but new gameplay styles. For instance, when we went back to Oshan during the Terminate invasion, we had the new Hive system where we're going underground and fighting underground. And we have obviously new mission types that obviously change the gameplay perspective and how you play and what armor types you use, whether you go sneak, you go full frontal assault, whatever it may be. And the broader implications is that Helldivers 2 may be redefining how live service games actually succeed in the modern era, because it has been one of the more successful live service games. And I would say this is one of those games that is truly a constant live service. It's not just your seasonal resets like I mentioned. It's updating every single day basically, because constantly new planets are being taken over by either the Helldivers or the factions that they're fighting. And the guy named Joel, who is the battle master, whatever you want to call it, overseer of the Galactic War, however you want to describe him as, constantly is updating things and changing things, having new attack plans or whatever it may be for the enemy factions, and having new planets taken over and everything. So it's a huge upgrade to service and live gaming service across the board. Let's talk about Ark Survival Ascended. Evolution through technology obviously is the big one. It now uses the Unreal Engine 5, and it's getting ready to upgrade to the Unreal Engine 5.7 to dramatically improve the lighting, physics, and environmental immersion. And although the launch faced performance concerns for sure back when it initially launched a couple years ago, the ongoing patches have steadily improved the stability and the playability. Now, there is still a lot of complaints on a lot of the server issues that constantly happen when new patches come out, and unfortunately, that is one of the drawbacks of Ark itself, is in being such a massive game. It is actually, I think, one of the biggest games currently on the market at over 230 gigabytes for the base game itself, not including all the maps, which are about 20 to 30 gigabytes in their own right. So it's obviously a massive thing to upkeep as a whole. Player retention remains kind of strong due to the deep systems like taming and base building and in PvP tribe warfare. I wouldn't say it's like massive, but I would say the your concurrent players are your most dedicated people that spend the most time on it. The only downside of Ark as a whole is its live system, in the sense of everything is live, and whatever you have or currently have, you have to log into every now and then to keep remaining as yours. Otherwise, it will decay, which is necessary for the development of the game, because if you just let everybody keep all their stuff forever, basically, there would be no new open spots on any single map, unfortunately, and the player base would just swell to lower numbers because they wouldn't find anywhere to be able to build. It would become boring and repetitive for them, and it would just be much harder. So I think that is good, but it's also bad in its own right for people that have normal lives and can't keep up with games like that. But I think the game does show how a title can evolve technology instead of just being replaced outright. Obviously Ark was built on its own system. Ark Survival Evolved originally, and then upgrading to the Unreal Engine 5 evolved all of those systems, but kept it feeling like the same exact game as before, which was good to an extent. Obviously, there was new things added in with Ascended that were not in Evolved, so it's just different abilities for the dinosaurs and even new dinosaurs and such, but I think it does continue to influence survival design through the combination of sandbox and RPG systems as a whole. I think the long-term implication is that future games may evolve in place rather than through sequels. I know Ark 2 is eventually going to come out, but I think Ark Ascended, a lot of people did not like Ark Ascended after Evolved, but I think it actually was something that was good and that a lot of people have grown to actually enjoy more. Now that they've had time to experience it. I first didn't like the idea of Ascended, but now I think I've kind of grown to love it a little bit. All right, let's talk about Halo. So this is obviously very controversial. Legacy versus modern identity. It remains one of the most influential first-person shooter franchises, but is struggling to maintain relevance in a crowded market, obviously. And with recent updates have improved some of the multiplayer balance in Infinite specifically, but the content cadence is where it was lacking. Infinite was very downtrodden and poor compared when it comes especially to the multiplayer side, especially compared to Halo 5. Halo 5 had a terrible campaign, but the multiplayer was actually not bad. They were constantly updating it, adding new weapons, adding new vehicles, adding new enemies, adding new different maps and systems. Halo Infinite, however, I will say did revolutionize the forging system and being able to script a lot of the maps as well, which obviously made it feel like you were more of a actual game designer rather than just a player who was forging a map, because you basically could create whole maps from scratch. Obviously you had the base blank map or whatever it may be, but you could essentially create whole maps from scratch and be able to do with it what you want, script different events, however maybe, and it revolutionized the actual system of building of map and world creation as a whole through the scripting system. But here's where my problem comes in shifting from 343 to Halo Studios, and now remastering, remaking, whatever you want to call it. It's remaking essentially the original Halo 1 game again. It already had a remaster, and now it's having a remake. They're adding new stuff to it. It's going to be an Unreal Engine 5. I guess it's something they needed to do because everything else was not working. So they figured, let's go back to nostalgia, which is going to drive a lot of people in. And it's going to bring a lot of people in. They want to feel that nostalgia in a new updated system. But I think it's a little bit lazy too at the same time. I'm excited for it, don't get me wrong. But I think it's also just a way for them to drag their feet on their next project because they realize the community feedback for Infinite was very poor. And Halo 5 community feedback was very poor. And Halo 4 community feedback was very poor. So they have to be able to actually bring something in that will actually bring people back to Halo. Because Halo has lost a lot of followers and a lot of fans over the years because of the poor decisions by 343 Industries. When Bungie let loose of Halo and gave it to 343, I think that was a massive shift in the actual essence of the game itself. It felt like its original identity died at that point in time. So they're trying to revitalize that through bringing back the original game. And I think that its core strengths and pacing and the map design of the campaign levels and stuff was okay whenever it came to Halo 4 and 5. It felt very Halo-esque in the traditional linear style movement, but I think Halo Infinite experimented a little bit too much with the open world. Even though I'm an open world fanatic, I think that some games are better left as a linear progression story rather than an open world feature such as Halo Infinite was. I don't think that Halo is meant to be an open world game. You can make a game that's maybe a side shoot from Halo that is not based on the Master Chief that could be an open world story, but I just feel like it just didn't fit the core of Master Chief or the story of Halo well. Being able to pick your own way through the story or whatever it may be. But I think competitors like Call of Duty and Apex Legends, obviously, or even Battlefield 6 now, obviously reshaped expectations around speed and progression whenever it came to multiplayer style. And Halo just kind of sat back on that. They didn't really have a good balanced, in the sense of competitive style multiplayer, and I think that's what they were really trying to push for. And because of that, they lacked on the campaign as a whole as well. Which I'll be honest. Halo was more about the campaign first and foremost than it ever was the multiplayer. Call of Duty was more about the multiplayer than it ever was the campaign, and I wish it would have stayed that way. And I think that they understood that, obviously multiplayer competitions drive in a lot of revenue, a lot of people, a lot of extra money to be able to, get through cosmetic skins or microtransactions, whatever it may be. But I think that Halo as a whole should have stayed focused on the campaign as the main focus and then multiplayer as the side focus, or have a split division on it. But I just think that they lack too much on the campaign. Now, going into the idea of microtransactions, obviously that was very discouraged and very unliked in the Halo Infinite side of things. They started it in Halo 5, and a lot of people did not like it, and they continued in Halo Infinite for all customization options, and people did not like it at all. So I hope that they keep away from the microtransaction side of things moving forward. But going forward with the Halo campaign evolved and looking at the series and what they're trying to do, they're eventually going to do Halo 2 remastered, remade, whatever, Halo 3 remade. And they're going to eventually obviously have Halo 7, and then there's the talk of the Halo standalone multiplayer game, which was originally named Code Tatanka, but we'll see what happens there. It just depends on how this is going to go for the longevity of the franchise, and I think this is probably Halo Studios' last chance to get something right before Halo doesn't necessarily die, but it definitely loses its place in the upper echelon of games as a whole. Which is sad for the franchise because it was one of the most revolutionary franchises in all of gaming, and now it's been reduced to ashes, more or less. Let's talk about one of the most nostalgic and long and sustaining games of all time, World of Warcraft. Obviously, Midnight just released about a month ago, the expansion Midnight for World of Warcraft, and it's obviously remained relevant for over 2 decades with a peak of more than 12 million players at one point. That was back in the Wrath of the Lich King. But which is obviously a long time ago, but it has maintained still millions of players even to this day. Expansion cycle obviously continues to drive spikes in player engagement and return rates. Seasonal systems and improved cadence has modernized the experience for current audiences ever since Dragonflight. I think they've done a lot better about having their content cadence and having more in each patch. beforehand they were starting to fizzle out, and it felt like it was just a game that was just getting a new raid every now and then, and it felt like it wasn't very relevant in the scene of keeping people engaged, keeping people up to date. But now they've really revolutionized all that, having half patches in the middle of cycles as well as whole new patches, and they even have half patches of half patches. They have, for instance, they'll have 12.0, 12.5, 12.75, and then 12.1, or 12 point, whatever, you get my point. You get my point. Whatever it is, but they have other patches within before the big patches as well. Obviously, guilds and raids and social structures remain key to the long-term retention of players. You have guild races to world firsts for raids that are constant competitions. You have PvP competitions. And Blizzard continues to iterate based on feedback and improving trust and stability. With a lot of the systems that are improving. I think what has actually gone downhill, though, was quite a bit was their Q&A system and their ticket system. Now you get a lot of automated responses, and you no longer have actual game masters that are actually able to come and help you with the issues that you're having. It's just a lot of automated responses, and things don't get fixed, and a lot of players have become disgruntled by that. But I think that few titles actually match WoW's cultural longevity and community depth, and it's revolutionizing things, especially when it's, they're talking about bringing WoW to console, but it's not exactly WoW to console in the sense of you're going to be forced to play on a controller. It's just more because the Xbox is integrated computer, integrated PC gaming console that is going to be their next big one. But I think that, as a whole, WoW has continued development and has actually demonstrated actual growth and recognized their own faults and actually been able to upturn and to change a lot of their ways that they had, especially during the Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands time, which was a dark time for people playing WoW because it just really felt like they just didn't care anymore. So now that we have a good, especially Chris Metzen back and have all those guys that are focusing on a lot of this stuff, or not Chris Metzen back. I'm sorry. I can't think of his name right now. Anyway, we have a lot of the good core story developers that are actually driving the story forward, which is what WoW is known for. It's story. Obviously, people like raids and they like the PvP experience, but the main focus is the story of WoW and the lore behind it all. And Midnight has obviously brought about what was talked about many, many years ago, way back in the past, the final battle between the light and the dark, or the light and the void. And a lot of people are excited to see its conclusion and are going to be a part of that experience as well. And then we go into the Last Titan, which is obviously a big Titan-themed expansion. The Titans have been these big protagonists/antagonists of the entire series. So obviously, after that, we'll see where WoW goes from there. But I think that it's still being revolutionized continuously, and eventually, maybe we'll hopefully see a WoW 2, I guess you could say, or something along those lines. But we'll see. Let's move out of the gaming realm, and let's talk about some of the hardware and tech that's going to be the next leap in the gaming industry. Obviously, advancement in GPUs and CPUs are enabling higher fidelity and more complex simulations in games. But portable PC gaming devices are growing in popularity and blending console convenience with PC power. The Switch 2 is obviously one of the biggest ones that's portable currently. And then Xbox Cloud Gaming, which you can even play games on your phone now. With obviously connected controller to it and stuff like that, which obviously expands, but still faces some latency and infrastructure challenges. But from my experience with it using cloud gaming, it actually has been pretty smooth. Fast SSDs are eliminating traditional loading constraints and changing levels design philosophy. And I know the Bethesda was talking about the new Elder Scrolls 6 that's going to be coming out, and how there's going to be virtually no loading screens in between any of the cities, any of the buildings you walk into, nothing. The promise is no loading screens, so we'll see if they can hold to that promise, but that would be pretty exciting to see, because it feels, obviously loading screens make you feel, okay, now I've got to wait to play a game that I'm trying to play. But if you go and you have a fluid, no loading screen game where you can just constantly move in and out and where you want to go, it's going to feel so much quicker, so much more like immersive, because you're actually being able to move at the pace you want to move. I would say high refresh rates, displays, and improved resolutions enhance both competitive and immersive experiences in these different types of games, as well as we, are able to get into games quicker. We're able to obviously improve the resolutions and the visual the visual concept of these games. Whether it's a competition or not, it's still awesome to look at some of these game designs and some of these levels that are constantly improving to the point where you feel immersive into the world. And then you're also joining the competitive experience of that, building upon that and being, meeting new communities, meeting new people that you play with, whatever it may be in the competitive scene or the casual scene. It doesn't really matter. I'd say that in esports specifically, peripherals are becoming increasingly specialized for performance play. You look at games such as Madden or FIFA, or even the new college NCAA. I still call it, but college football that's finally out. A lot of those games have revolutionized a lot of the sports style games and more immersive actual play feel and play style, where it's actually starting to mimic more of real life NFL or real life college football. Obviously, it's still video game speed, which is a running joke, obviously, but it still feels more immersive and like you're actually having to able to control the team from the perspective of the coach as a whole, rather than just getting out there, throwing the ball, and calling it good. I'd say developers can now build larger and denser worlds due to hardware improvement. And you look at a game like Crimson Desert that just came out that is absolutely massive, very visually beautiful. And I just saw a recent video that I didn't even know you could do this. You can essentially rocket yourself up, not rocket, but like do some way to get yourself all the way up into space. It's like over 10,000 meters. I can't remember the exact number, but you actually make it all the way to space. And the coolest thing about the developers are they developed a space, I guess, skybox, you could say, for when you actually are able to reach up there somehow. There was a space box up there, which is really cool because I don't think that people were actually meant to see that. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, they built this world and it is absolutely massive. It's just as massive as it is, it's also beautiful. The gameplay, I haven't played a lot yet, but the gameplay, from what I understand and what I've experienced, is just incredible so far. It feels so immersive, like you're actually a part of this beautiful, well-written and lore-established world, and it's also comedic at its own points too. I think the next generation of gaming will be shaped equally by hardware and software evolution, but also I think the biggest one that a lot of people miss and don't realize is industries, especially smaller companies. These bigger companies don't really do it, but the smaller companies that actually listen to their player feedback. Listening to player feedback has become one of the most revolutionized things for games that have had success, such as Helldivers 2. I think that it shows more care for the community, which holds retention a lot higher. And when you hold retention, those players bring in other players because they feel like they can trust this game and they know that the other players will feel the same way. So obviously, listening to player feedback and having engagement with your actual player base is just as important as well. So let's kind of talk about the industry shift in AAA and the risk and creativity. I think that AAA budgets frequently exceed about $200 to $300 million, but because of increasing financial pressures on studios. I think this has led to a reliance on sequels, remakes, and established intellectual properties. You look at something like the Oblivion remake. I wouldn't say it was a cash grab, but I think it was a placeholder for sure because a lot of people want. Even though it was not necessarily made by that Bethesda, it's still they're the founder of it, and I think it was more of a placeholder in between Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, which is inevitable, but it also was one of those remakes that was kind of like, yes, that was awesome, but why? It was fun to play, but it was just also the question of why. Sequels obviously are just kind of a commonplace thing that are going to happen no matter what, but I think that a lot of industries or studios are also starting to recognize the value more of true, actual good live service as opposed to sequels. Obviously, sequels need to eventually take place because you can't just keep running on the same system for 20 plus years unless you're World of Warcraft and expect the same stability. World of Warcraft is its own ecosystem, and it will hold its own place in people's hearts for years to come, even if they don't change the system. They could stay in that same system for the next 20 years, and people will still go to it. People will still play it. I think that player expectations around performance, polish, and content are higher than ever. I think that players know what they want. They understand what these industries can do, and they know the money that they're running on. So they feel like there is zero excuses for a company to produce a game that ends up becoming absolute slop. Just saying it. All these new Call of Duty games that are pumped out every year, people recognize that there is just issue after issue after issue, and after they've done this for so long, Activision, whoever it is, you would think that they would fix everything that is the problem, but they don't. And a lot of players are starting to recognize that. Call of Duty numbers have significantly dropped in recent years compared to what they used to be. Another perfect example was Halo Infinite. It was not finished upon release. It was not ready to be released. It was just pushed into the market because it needed to meet a deadline, and it failed because of it. I think the industry is at a crossroads between safe profitability and bold innovation. They want to be able to produce good products, but obviously stakeholders are pushing them. And I mean the game developers themselves. I don't mean the studios. Obviously stakeholders are pushing them to get these games out as soon as possible because they want to start making profits immediately. They don't care how good the game is. That's a problem, and that's going to become a sustainability problem for them in the future because people are no longer going to trust these companies or these systems to be able to actually produce good games, unfortunately. So I think across these trends, the clear takeaway is that gaming is not just growing, but fundamentally changing as a whole. The question is, which direction will ultimately define the next decade for games? Is it going to be the actual listening to player feedback and revolutionizing games around player retention, or just quick cash grabs, as they continue to always do with monetization built in that people inevitably buy? And that's the problem, is the cash grab for the monetization is just as much as fault for the players who participate in that monetization as it is the companies who make it. Because if they didn't participate, the companies would realize it's a waste of time and a waste of money, and it wouldn't be any benefit whatsoever to them. So anyway, I hope that this helped inform you guys a little bit about what's going on with the gaming world currently, and kind of my own opinion on a lot of things. I think that, I would ask you guys, what trend of game do you think will shape the future, and why is that the case? Is it something like a full constant live service like Helldivers 2, or is it a game that's going to constantly get sequels like Halo? Tell me what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time.